Hi, and welcome to The Bright Balloon, a podcast where I'm sharing bright ideas for your balloon business. My name is Sarah Meyer, and I'm a balloon business owner like you, and I love the creative side of what I do, but I really love the business side, which seems to be the part where most people struggle. So I'm here to help. Each week, I'm bringing you an episode full of bite-sized tips you can use to make tiny improvements to your business. I want you to make more money, eliminate stress, and learn along with me as we grow our creative businesses together. Welcome to The Bright Balloon. Hello and welcome to this episode. All right, I am using September as a standalone series. I have been loving doing interviews. I know you guys have too, but after back-to-back interviews, I am going to do a quick series each week, and it's going to be called Set It Up September. So my thought process is that going into the fourth quarter, I feel like we either finish strong or you're kind of burnt out, so you kind of coast to the end of the year. And if you do balloons, the end of the year is kind of crazy. Like if you do any New Year's Eve balloon drops or parties or weddings, sometimes it's like we make it to January and then we need a break. Unfortunately, January is when a lot of people set resolutions. Like, this is the year I'm going to get my finances on track, or this is the year I'm going to hire help, or this is the year, I'm finally going to do whatever. But the problem is January is too late. Like, we all set our goals and it's too late. The year's already started and we need to be up and going. So instead, I am calling September Set It Up September. So each week I am going to talk about 4 things that I've set up in my business that have helped ease the burden or streamline or just make some component of what I've done easier for myself, in hopes that you can take September to set that up or at least look into it and then execute on January 1st. So you don't have to wait until then, but certain things, like I'm going to talk about finances, January 1st is a really, really convenient time to start a new bookkeeping software or to start a new way of like balancing your budget. It makes it really easy to then look back and look at your year's progress. Like, I just switched to new bookkeeping software literally 6 months into the year, and I would not recommend it. I had to go back and like recategorize 6 months worth of expenses and income, and it's just a lot of work. So if you can start that right at the beginning of the year, that is definitely a benefit. And same things with resolutions in general. Sometimes we think about our goals in January, and it takes us like 2 or 3 months to really get those goals in motion. So instead, if you set those goals now with the intention, with the plan to actually start them on January 1st, I almost think that brings you into the new year with a bit more momentum. So anyway, this is going to be a 4-part series. Each week in September, these are going to be brief episodes with very actionable steps. So things that you can actually implement and do. Again, I know you've been loving the interviews, so have I. But those are a little bit more long form. These are going to be a little bit more short. They're just going to be me talking. So if that is not your favorite thing to listen to, I'll see you in October. But for anyone else, I am going to talk through a couple of things that I've done this year that have really, really moved the needle in my business. And so the first thing, I'm just going to dive right in. If you can't already tell, it's finances. I changed how I did my finances, and I swear I recorded an episode about this. And then when I went back to reference it, it wasn't there. I had just made up in my head that I had done an episode about Profit First. I mentioned that I was going to read the book, which is Profit First, but I never really did a thorough update of kind of how I've implemented, what it's done for my finances. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to give you like the Cliff's Notes version of what the Profit First system is for your finances. But this is not at all a substitute for getting and reading the book. I have a lot of books that I get like one chapter in and I'm just like, this isn't really for me. But that book I read cover to cover, actually a couple times, which again is not what I do, but because it reads more of like a manual and because your numbers might change, it's a good resource to kind of go back and just keep on your shelf. So Profit First, if you are unfamiliar, I referenced at the beginning of last year that I wanted to read this book and implement this kind of like, I guess you'd call it like a shorthand money tracking system. It's not bookkeeping. It's not like a replacement for QuickBooks by any means. But it is a way to like look at your bank accounts and kind of gauge the health of your business, which if you're like me, I open my Chase app on my phone. I look at my account and that's how I know like the health of my business. I mean, obviously I have like bookkeeping and QuickBooks and I run reports every once in a while, but like day to day, like say I have to do a balloon order. I check my bank account, I see if there's enough money in there to place the order, and then I do it. So that is the extent of my like day-to-day money tracking. And this system kind of makes sure that you're on good track, that you have the money you need set aside, and gives you kind of like ballpark figures to shoot for. So that for me was the biggest thing, that like I was always unsure like how much I should be spending. Say that someone gave me $100 for an order. Like how much of that should I be spending on balloons? How much of that should be saved for taxes? How much of that like do I get to keep as like a sole business owner? Like what is mine and at what point can I take that? Like that's where it got a little bit of like fuzzy for me, especially because if you're like me and you're like a one-woman show, I think it's almost more difficult because when everything is yours, you feel like you can take what you need. You also, I think most of the time, don't take anything. Like I think you look at your bank accounts as like, well, it's all mine anyway. So like, who cares if it's all in one account? And I don't really need a paycheck. I don't really need to pay myself this month. I'm going to like reinvest it. And I'm saying that with air quotes, like reinvest into my business. And that is the one thing that the author really advocates against, which I like. This idea that reinvesting, or basically not taking a paycheck, it's basically a crutch to allow your business to run on a really unhealthy like structure. So like if you are saying like, yeah, I'm successful even though I'm not taking any money from the business, then like you're not really that successful. Like you should be taking a regular cut of every single job, of every single month. You should be taking money out. Otherwise, like you're literally working for free, and then you're running a hobby. Like, and that's fine too. I mean, most hobbies cost money. So if you're even like breaking even on your hobby, that's fine. I would say most people, if you're interested in this podcast, that is not you. I would say most people who are here are looking to make money and really have this be like a job. Okay, so I've been rambling, but anyway, let's get into the nuts and bolts of this Profit First system. So, okay, first of all, the book is called Profit First. I got my copy on Amazon for like $10. So definitely get a copy because there are like charts and stuff that you can actually like fill in your actual numbers and it'll spit out a target number for you or like a percentage. But before you even get into like the specific numbers and percentages, I think one of the overarching like concepts is that your money should not all be in one big checking account. So you should have a business checking account. If you don't have one of those, that's step one. You have to have a business checking account. And then your money shouldn't all be sitting in one big pot. He makes the argument that like if there's $2,000 sitting in one big pot, you feel like you have $2,000 to spend, when really 50% of that should already be in your own bank account as the owner. And like 30% of that should be set aside for like materials or like running your business. Like you should run your entire business on that 30%. 15% should go into a tax, like a holding account to pay your taxes. And then 5% is going to be the profit account. So don't worry about those numbers yet. I'm going to break those down a little bit slower. But the idea is that you need multiple like checking and savings accounts. So he goes into like agonizing detail about like what kind of accounts and where to set those up. And he suggests having them at multiple banks. And like, I definitely don't do that. I personally have 4 accounts. I have an income account. I have a tax account. I have an operating budget account, and then I have owner's pay, which is a separate account that like that's my money. So I transfer money in there to pay myself. So I just have 4 accounts. And I think 2 of them are checking accounts and 2 of them are savings accounts. Do whatever gets you the lowest fees is basically what it comes down to. You don't want to be paying $15 in maintenance fees in any of your accounts. Like do whatever you need to keep the minimum balance to not be paying fees. But I am able to get great clarification by having 4 different bank accounts. I used to have one, and I would have to look at it and be like, wow, I have like $4,000 in my account. I'm doing great. But really like $3,000 of that was needed to like do my upcoming jobs, and then the rest of it was going to taxes. So really, I was like scary close to not being in good financial health, and I had no idea. So this basically all of my money, and I use, digital invoicing and Square, and actually that's going to be another episode in this Set It Up series. But all of my money comes into one big account. That's like my big pool. That's my income account. From there, a couple times a month, I do manual transfers. So from that income account, I will shoot 50% of that money directly into my own bank account, and it's mine, and it's never going back into my business. That's that caveat that he says, like, do not fall for the trap of like reinvesting. If your business needs you to spend money, it needs to come from the business. It can't be your personal money. So once that 50% comes out of the business and into my own pocket, it stays there forever. Now, out of that big pool of money, 30% is what he recommends. That's like the ideal. You might not be there right away, but 30% goes to running the entire business. So 30% goes into my operating. So that is like what I use to order balloons. That's what I use to fill my tank with gas. That's what I use to buy like stuff for my shop that I'm fixing up. Like 100% of what I need to run my business comes out of that operating account, and I'm able to do it on 30%. Then the 15%, that sucks. That's my least favorite account, but it's good. It's good peace of mind. I have another account, and it's just tax holdings. So 15% of every single job gets transferred into this tax checking account, or actually it might be a savings account. And then quarterly, that's the account that I draw on to pay my taxes. That is important because when your accountant gives you your estimated tax statements, if you all of a sudden go from like, I don't know, maybe your COVID year sucked, and now this year you're making like double. Well, whatever they told you to pay in estimated taxes is going to be way less than what you actually need to be paying. But by separating out that 15% automatically, you're going to have enough in that tax account. So at the end of the year when you owe, you're going to have that money set aside. Because my first year that I owed taxes, that I made real money, I owed $10,000 that I did not have sitting anywhere. I mean, I did, but I thought it was like my money, and it wasn't. So at the end of the year, it felt like I had nothing left over, and it was devastating. Like it sucked. But I learned the hard way. So I hope you don't have to do that. So the 15% goes into taxes, and then the 5%, which ironically is kind of like the whole idea of the book, is the profit account. That's kind of my like whatever account. I don't super care about the profit account. I think if you are a business owner with multiple owners and multiple employees, that 5% is great because it's yours. If you're an individual business owner like me, that 5% is yours anyway. So I more just like see it as my fun money. Like we force ourselves, my husband and I, we force ourselves to spend that 5% on something fun. So like my husband just took his family on a vacation. I am actually going on a separate vacation. We bought bikes. We use that 5% every quarter to like basically blow on something fun so that it feels like the fact that I'm working around the clock is worth something. Otherwise, I'm just going to have a heart attack and die. Like you do need those little rewards, those pick-me-ups. And I think if that money just went into like our everyday checking account, it would just get absorbed. We'd spend it on something lame like groceries, or like, we really need our gutters fixed. And like, we still need to do those things, but like it feels cool to get a bike, and it felt fun to go on a vacation. Like it is, the profit account is like my rainy day reminder of why I have my own business. So I like the profit account, but it's only 5%. So it's, it's like a few $100s, maybe a few $1,000s every quarter that you can pull out and use for something fun. The other reason why I love the designated percentages, it gave me guardrails and kind of like an ideal. Like the 50% to pay yourself of your overall income, that's like the goal. Many people aren't there. I have pretty high prices, and I run a pretty lean business, so I was able to get to that 50% like pretty easily. I didn't have to do a lot. But the book also has a few chapters about like cutting expenses. If you're like looking at your income and you're like, there's no way that I could pay myself 50% of what I bring in. Like that, I wouldn't be able to pay my rent. I wouldn't be able to pay my, vehicle payment. I wouldn't be able to buy insurance. Like basically there's one of two solutions. You can cut expenses or you can charge more. I think you can charge more. Like just Raise your prices 10% and see what happens. People will pay it. The other option is like maybe you just can't afford that huge warehouse that you think you need, or maybe you bought a brand new transit van when really you could have gotten away with buying a 5-year-old one. So the book goes into a few details about like how to cut costs and how to increase revenue. But I like that idea that it's just like that 50% in my pocket and then running my business on the other 30%. Like that is a good target for me to keep in the back of my head. Before I was kind of just like clueless. I was kind of just like making up my own numbers and making up my own benchmarks, and I just kind of felt like I was in the dark. Like you can feel like you're doing great if you have no benchmark of what you're shooting for. Okay, so I am rambling, but that is my Cliff's Notes version of what Profit First is. It is a book, and then it is a system that you can use to implement in your business and kind of organize your money. So again, you're not going to get it all just from what I just said, but hopefully it gives you an idea of like the background kind of research and getting your head around it that can take place between now and the beginning of the year. By far, the most difficult point for me was setting up the bank accounts. It was a lot of energy. I did it during COVID, so like I couldn't really go into the bank, and because it was a business account, I used Chase, and like you have to do that in person. You can't just like set up new bank accounts online. So that part sucked, and I'm really glad I did it. Again, I ignored a lot of the advice in the book. I did not set up different accounts at different banks, and I didn't like negotiate down the fee structure. Like I just did the easiest route for me, and I keep the minimum balance above whatever is required to not pay fees. But setting up those few bank accounts, it's a pain in the butt and it takes some time. So if this sounds interesting to you, you now have the last quarter to order your book, read through it, plug in your numbers, and figure out what your ideal percentages are. Remember, you're probably not going to start with taking a 50% cut, but trust me, as someone who's there, it's awesome when you know how many dollars of every sale you get to keep. Like that is a very rewarding feeling. It makes you feel in control. All right, and before we end, I just wanted to take a moment to say that I said I heard about Profit First from a bunch of people in the balloon community, and that was at Balloon Boss Summit. So Balloon Coach is the sponsor of this show. You hear me talk about Balloon Coach all the time, and Balloon Boss Summit is the in-person event that is taking place in November. That is where I talked shop about, things like this, really specific things about like, yeah, but how much do you pay yourself? Like very simple questions with complicated answers. And when you hear a bunch of people that have businesses and you hear what's working for them, that's where I started hearing like profit first, profit first, profit first. And I heard it so many times, I went home and I ordered the book. So all of that to say, thank you to our show sponsor, ballooncoach.com. And if you are still considering attending Balloon Boss Summit in November, I will be one of the instructors, and trust me, I am like the least qualified person there. Everyone is amazing and so much smarter than I am. So if you like anything I have to say on this podcast, you need to be at Summit. So head to ballooncoach.com using the link in the show notes if you are interested in checking it out. All right, that is going to wrap up this episode. If you are interested in Profit First, grab a copy of the book, get it from your library for free, and just read through it. You have 3 months before you have to start your fresh year of finances, and that gives you plenty of time to figure out if this might work for you. It has absolutely worked for me, and I'm so glad that so many people referred me to this resource. That wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I tried to keep it bright and light in a few minutes or less. I'll talk to you next time. For more information about any of the resources or courses mentioned in today's show, please head to thebrightballoon.com or check the show notes wherever you're listening.